Hey, all, it's KR, King of D&D Homebrew, talking today about a linear campaign, whether you should run one and whether it is compatible with the Sandbox concept. And some of this came out of my last video where I talked about not necessarily having a big bad villain that dominates everything. And I had some pushback. I had some people that said, first of all, players may want that. They may want a big villain. They want to be heroic. They want to take something on. I also had people saying, well, Sandbox, there's no such thing, right, as a Sandbox campaign. And of course, that's true. Unlike the real world, where once one damn thing after another in a D&D, you make up a homebrewed world, I've created it all. I've set it all up. I'm reacting for all the NPCs. And however much I try to, determine their reactions based on what I've set up and not my own thoughts about what's best, it's not just the players do whatever they want to do in terms of the cities or the history or any of that. And what that gets down to is the definition of terms, what it means Sandbox, what it means, a linear campaign, what it means in a sort of cooperative or storytelling campaign, which I'm not really talking about. I'm talking about where you create a homebrewed world and then how you set it up and present it to the players. Is it just they just go out and explore, and whatever they explore is what happens to them, and then their influence on events maybe gives rise to some narrative or even some villain? Or you have a villain or a narrative or a force that starts right from the beginning, and it's clear this is what this campaign is about. And I got thinking, this is what's so great about doing these videos, because I got thinking about this and thought, well, there may actually be times where a linear campaign in which we're going to go through this storyline with a major force villain that's clearly the opposing force here, and this is what the players have to deal with, that might be an okay thing for both the players and the GM. And again, it's a homebrewed world. It's not a module or adventure path or anything where things are set up much more clearly, created by someone else. Some of them, I played the Kingmaker adventure path. There is some room in there for some sandboxy stuff, and I think Storm King's Thunder had that. I can't remember them that well. And there it does depend on what is the adventure path or module or campaign setting determined. I'm saying if you're going to create your own world, do you purposely create that as a linear style campaign? And I think there's a couple of things here that are interesting in that when you do that, do you present it that way to the players up front? Or do you say, let them discover what's going on and then make a decision about whether they like that? And of course, if you're familiar with your group and you say these guys want to have a focus for their efforts, they don't want to just wander around and try to figure out what's going on, which is not really what you want to do anyway. But let's just say they're used to that. And they find that satisfying. Or do you want to present it to the players in such a way to see it? Are you going to find this satisfying? Or is the whole construct of the world designed around solving some problem or issue such that once that's over, the campaign has ended? And I'll explain. I set up a campaign one time where all the players found themselves on this beach. And I've done some videos on this. I put up a link here, but they found themselves on this beach. They couldn't quite remember how they'd gotten there. They didn't know the other 5 player characters that were on the beach as well. And they were in this other dimension. They didn't recognize anything about it. They recognized the races of the humanoids, the terrain types and whatever, but nothing else was familiar. So clearly the emphasis of the campaign there is linear in that how did we get here and how do we get back? But of course, the thing is I'd made it all up. So part of the adventure was going into this world, exploring the world, finding out how it was situated. What's the history of the world? Do they know? Has anyone heard of the various cities and stuff? Although I think I started it off, they couldn't quite remember. Then slowly but surely memories came. It's a long time ago. And then finally, when they discovered the secret of this world, they figured out a way to get back to their own. But that is technically a linear campaign in that the problem of getting back to their own dimension, once that was solved, we were done. We didn't continue to run. And another way people sometimes define a sandbox is that even if there is some linear storyline or a couple of major villains, the players can ignore them. They can do whatever they want. While this is technically true, if you think about characters running, let's say you have a Middle Earth campaign, literally the story of Lord of the Rings, but you put player characters in and they just ignore it. Sauron is over there and we see Mordor and we see the, riders of Rohan wandering around. But all we want to do, we want to explore the Misty Mountains. We want to go to the, Witch King of Agnar's, lands, or way to the south, or all these places that you see on the map of Middle Earth in the books. And we're just going to ignore that storyline. Well, that could be done. But if you were running that as a campaign with this super evil character and stuff, would players really do that? Probably not. They would get involved. And as I said, there are a lot of players who really enjoy that. So I don't think it is inherently, a bad thing to have that if the players are enjoying that and don't feel railroaded into doing things. And by the railroading, what I mean is, if the players are acting upon, let's say there's a city that has some interest in either helping them defeat, the forces, or, discover things along the way or whatever, and you as the GM are making them very hesitant to work with the players, and, or even actively opposing them or throwing them in jail for daring to ask questions, or, whatever it is, where you're thinking, the players are thinking, why would they do this? They would be supporting, they would want to end this unless they are working with them. But if they're not, and you see what I'm saying, like, you can start to do things to preserve storylines or the way you've seen things unfold. Oh, if they get too close here, things are going to get messed up over here. This is what happens sometimes with modules and adventure paths. You'll see that they'll say the players can't discover this until this point. So if they go through too quickly, it's going to screw things up because they're supposed to have this item or that, or know this story. So that's where if you're doing a sandbox with a linear campaign, you're going to have to adjust if the players do things in a way that you're not prepared for. So that just doesn't, it's a prescribed, you got to go here, or like a computer game where if you don't find this item, you're stuck until you find it. They've got to be able to wander and do what they want. And then bad things can happen. And here again, you've presented all these clues. And what'll happen is a GM in a linear style campaign will realize they're not getting this. So I'm just going to have to either present it to them with an NPC. This is what you should be doing. Or literally meta game, guys, you've got to go do this. You got to go help this person. I've seen it, right? Because if we don't do that, we're going to screw up this whole linear cycle of things. Well, you want to be sophisticated enough such that that's not going to happen. You've set this up. And so this is where you get into this more generalized, here's the force, here's what they're doing. Clearly the players are going to get involved in this, but let's just see in what direction, and again, if you just have one clue, this is the only place to go. We ask this person, no, it's this, okay, we go over here. Discover this, we defeat this. Now it's this clue to go over there. That's it. Well, that's not just a linear campaign. That's the classic railroad, which is what I believe all of my commenters that were arguing with me over my definition of, a railroad or a sandbox or a linear campaign versus a true sandbox and what all that means. We're all trying to get away from the railroad concept. And I just think it's when you're forcing players to do things, it's clear that you as the GM are just saying, nope, you got to do this. And it may be structural. You may have said, they can't go here without having this. I've got to send them over here. Whereas, first of all, it's never good practice to design things where if they don't have this item, they're screwed. So if they do it, you better have a backup plan. You better give them some options and with clever play and good ideas and say yes to those, and just say, well, even though you didn't have this thing that I thought you would have, that's okay because you're going to be able to do this. Right? Or just don't set those up at all. Try to leave it a little more open. But again, the thrust of the campaign is, how do we get back to our home plate? How do we defeat this Sauron-like figure? How do we prevent some cult and all its allies from opening up the gate that will bring demons to overrun this entire plane? Those are classic linear style campaigns where everything else pales in comparison. If you're in a world where World War II is raging, that occupies everyone's mind. It's not just, well, I heard about that war, but I'm busy trying to, build my business, or just, I want to go and see the Arctic Circle. And maybe there were people exploring the Arctic Circle or whatever, but the people that were involved in the world were like, how can I help the war effort? you know, and this becomes so overwhelming that it just becomes unrealistic that people would do that. As I said, the Lord of the Rings example. And I've talked about timelines before where the sense that we're just going to run on and on and on can become almost oppressive, especially if you're in a system in which the higher level characters, it becomes unwieldy. And so a linear campaign does help that, because you just know once we get to this point and solve the mystery or defeat the problem, the force that's opposing everyone, the campaign is done and we can do another one. And it also builds up excitement because you've got this big battle and the players are trying to prepare themselves and the bad guys, and they know, we got 3 more sessions or whatever. And sometimes you'll have a ticking clock situation. But the point is, once that's done, once the big battle occurs and the ring goes into Mount Doom, or they go back to their home plane, that's it. And we can go on to something else. And that can be satisfying. It ends. Because I have a tendency with a sandbox like I run it to where the campaigns kind of stop because people just change their jobs, or, so I had one that went on 8 years. Then we played once a month. But that's a long time to play. There was some breaks in between. Another guy ran for a while. I played, but then they wanted me to come back, and it's another one of these stories. But and then I think we started another group of characters, or then one group got lost in some debate. Again, this is so long ago. But it did just go on and on and on until a couple people moved out of state, and we put it on hiatus and never returned. That's how campaigns ended. So having this linear structure may in fact be more satisfying to your players, because how long as adults, real life intrudes. People's schedules change, they move, they just can't, they don't have the time. So if you've only got, you say to them, okay, I figure this is going to take, we run once a week or once every 2 weeks. And I know it's going to go up to about 10th level, and you can figure out the leveling of your system and whether you use milestones or whatever. This is going to be a year, or this is going to be 2 years, or however you want to put it. And that's what a linear campaign can give you. Again, it's a sandbox. They can explore. They can do what they want. But I think that there are options where a sandbox, as defined by certain people, which is just there are no big storylines, that the players just explore. They create things totally through their actions, right? You're reacting as a GM, but you're not thinking that there's no great forces in the world like the real world. Then that has a tendency to go on and on unless you create something, or they explore something and uncover some, portal that's going to bring all their demons in. But then if they shut it down, now we're back to one damn thing after another, and that may not be satisfying to you. So I think it really was useful for me to hear these comments. And a shout out to my Patreon supporters. I really appreciate you guys. To my Night supporters, I'm going to be a map this week. Map I've used in my home campaign. I'll have different sites on it, different ideas, encounters that I've done. And then my Duke supporters, of course, always get the PDF. But now I'm going to talk about traveling through your world, how this particular map really emphasizes some of the issues and some of the fun that you can make, because players have to travel through dangerous areas, and what does that mean in terms of how you create a social network, a social, environment for all the cities and NPCs of your world. And if you like what you've seen on my channel, please subscribe. I'm always looking for more. Leave some comments. Those of you that really love linear campaigns, I'd like to hear more. As it turns out, I realized I've run one, and my players love that, the Lost Party thing. And keep playing an RPG game, whichever one you choose, and tell somebody else about it.